Hi. About 3 weeks ago, I wrote an article on my blog discussing the exit strategy for the European Union from the lockdown during the coronavirus pandemic. In this article, I basically discussed several issues. In the beginning, I talked about really the trade-offs between lockdown and not locking down. And my personal view is that if you don't have to lock down, namely, if you have the capacity in your healthcare system, then you should not be locking down, just like Sweden and Switzerland have been doing. They are going to come out of this pandemic stronger. Their economies will not be harmed as badly as some other countries have been. And so they are going to recover quicker, and they're going to have a better competitive position. And that's something, unfortunately, it's too late to have that discussion. So it's just something that we should have in mind. And then I talked about neoliberalism and the need to return to a Keynesian style consensus across the European Union for it to really recover. And one point that I want to make that I didn't really put in the blog was that the healthcare systems of some southern European countries, namely Italy and Spain, have been compromised, particularly because of neoliberalism. Because of austerity that have been forced upon those countries, and by basically the Germans and some northern European countries, the capacities of their healthcare system have been weakened, and they could not cope, and that's why they had a worse outbreak. And that's really something that we should keep in mind, because neoliberalism a lot of times has been championed by accountants. Not okay. I when I say accountant, I don't really want to insult people, but by people who are short term. Let's say they've been championed by short term people who are myopic about the welfare of a nation, right? And in the long term, I think it's not necessarily good. Austerity is really bad. And another example is the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has had over a decade of austerity, and the conservative governments, successive ones, have been cutting the NHS services, and we see that they're doing very poorly, and they continue to do poorly, and I suspect that they will do poorly in the recovery as well. And the question becomes this. You see, and this is very similar to the question of locking down versus not locking down. And here, austerity versus not austerity, because does austerity save money or does not austerity save money? If you have austerity, you saved some money, but then you have a crisis that you could not control because you had austerity, and in the end, you lose more money, and you have to pay more money. You have to raise more debt. That's actually very bad. And by the way, the austerity in the United Kingdom did not decrease the level of debt. So they always had deficit. So that's something that's ironic, right? And then we have, in this article, I talk about the euro. I said that euro is something of a luxury. It's not necessarily the exorbitant luxury of the US dollar, but it's something that still a lot of countries don't have. So that's basically the three main points that I touched on in the previous recording. And in this recording, I just want to highlight the other two. I just want to talk about the other two. One is the exit strategy. Another one is the risks involved. Right, the first one, exit strategy. Of course, we're gonna have to do contact tracing. I think it's much better to do tracing rather than mitigation. right? Locking down, that is not good. That is bad for the economy. But nevertheless, there are some things I believe that we can do differently, such as, for example, working remotely, promoting more distant work, telecommuting, and for education, for students, especially higher education, it's certainly possible to be carried out in distance, and that can basically reduce a lot of the contacts, unnecessary contacts. And I think perhaps in the beginning we should also look out for entertainment. For example, maybe we could use some streaming for sports events, streaming for concerts, etc. There are ways to reduce mass gatherings with less disruption to the economy and to the way of life. I think that's important. But the most important point that I make in this article is that the role of EU governments and the European Central Bank should be to improve the quality of life for Europeans. It's not to maximize employment. It is not to ensure the accumulation of wealth, right? And it's so what I mean is that you see the Federal Reserve Bank have two mandates. One is employment. Another one is stability of the currency. Now the ECB, of course, needs to have some stability of the currency ensured, but not necessarily employment, right? Because if the ECB and the European Union can work together and the European nations can work together, there could be implement some form of universal basic income. They could have some better protection against unemployment. They could have employment programs that help people get by and help people succeed. And I think there should also be programs that encourage innovation. There should also be programs that encourage entrepreneurship, right? So my point is this: rather than of course, I think the European Central Bank needs to take an active, need to play an active role, but I don't think it should play the role that the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States have been playing, which is directly purchasing assets in the market. I think that can help the capital markets, but it's not going to help the real economy, because money that goes into the capital market stays in the capital markets, especially when the capital markets is where money can be made, whilst the real economy is suffering. The real economy is shrinking. So I don't think that is the right way to do it. I think that is exactly the wrong way to do it, because it really completely detaches the capital markets from the stock market, etc. The capital markets from the real economy. And we're probably going to see an inflation in the capital markets, while a deflation in the real economy in the United States. And that is really bad. I hope the European Union is not going to do that, but let's not hold our breath. But what I think should be done is instead to inject money into the real economy. And how do you do that? You give some form of universal basic income to people, to everyone in the country, so that they can spend money, right? You ensure employment you improve your unemployment programs so that people have money to spend. And as they do, we're probably gonna see some. In this case, it's gonna be some form of inflation in the real economy, and maybe a deflation in the capital markets, because capital markets is not entirely sure. But it could also be that the Federal Reserve, the game that the Federal Reserve Bank is playing, can have ripple effects over capital markets across the globe. If that's the case, then it's even less reason for the ECB to do what the Fed has been doing, right? So that's my opinion. I don't know if they are going to do it, because I think they're not going to do it. I think they're not going to do it because some Northern European countries are very reluctant to give money to people in other countries, especially poor countries. They think, it is their belief, that the poor countries are poor because they have made choices, lifestyle choices and economic choices. They have made decisions that led to their short-term enjoyment, and after the enjoyment is over, and now they have to suffer, and they should be taught a lesson. So that is the view held by many Northern Europeans. It is an opinion that could be argued for, but it's also but it does not change. But it does not change the outcome, which is that if you don't do any proactive program, the Southern European countries will have difficult time recovering from this, right? And there could be social unrest, and it's possible that some countries may deviate, may basically drift further and further away from the European Union, and eventually the European Union will collapse, and I think everyone will be worse for it. The Northern Europeans in particular, because if within the Union it's so bad for countries such as Italy and Spain and Greece, it's probably not going to be much worse outside, because they can have their own currency, they can have their own trade relationships, and maybe they're going to actually do better. But the Northern Europeans have been benefiting from the setup of the European Union. If the European Union is no more, they will lose this benefit, and at the same time, they're gonna experience turmoil in the financial markets. They're gonna experience shocks to their economic system, and it's going to be not a pretty sight, right? So this is basically what I wrote in this article. Of course, I also mentioned nationalism and cowardice in leadership, etc., which are hazards to avoid. And to be honest, there is in me not too much confidence in the European nations to collectively do the right thing. I think the Union was constructed in a flawed manner to begin with a wish that countries would grow together, and there will be more convergence. But in recent years, we have seen divergences, and these divergences have been caused by, in my opinion, selfishness, nationalism, and at the heart of those are neoliberalism. Basically, I make money, fuck you. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Basically that, right? So anyway, so thank you for watching or listening to this recording. I think in this week, the first week of May, I'm going to write another blog article on my blog. So this is my blog. Anyway, so thanks, and have a great day.